Hello class, we are done with our discussion in the chapter 2 about the economic impact. So we are now in the other sectors or other areas of the macro perspective of tourism and hospitality. So we are now in chapter 3 and we will discuss about the socio-cultural impact of tourism and hospitality. Again, we still have in this course THC1 macro perspective of tourism and hospitality. Once again, this is your instructor, Jason Cano. So tourism and hospitality will holds an immense power in shaping how we connect and understand different cultures. So they will bring people together, creating opportunities for sharing traditions and also the languages and ways of life. So we all know that one of the impact of tourism and hospitality industry to the local community, it brings the people together with the different culture, different backgrounds, and different languages. That is why in your curriculum, you also need to take the foreign language course or subject so that we can also um, have this conversation with different nationalities. Okay, so the effect of tourism and hospitality will bring people together and we will create opportunities for sharing traditions. So, for example, other tourists coming from different country, so if they will visit this particular country, they will share traditions. Okay, so they will adapt something, for example, lifestyle or culture from other country, and also the languages. That is why we also have learn the different language if we will travel to different places. So this exchange can breathe new life into fading customs and historical sites, and also preserving them for future generations. But yet there's a careful line to trend. And as I also discussed in the previous lecture, mass tourism sometimes alters these traditions to fit visitor expectations and risking the loss of authenticity. Okay, so if there is a mass tourism, there's a bunch of number of tourists that will visit a particular place. There's also a risk on that because sometimes it will lose the authenticity of the culture or tradition on that place. So while tourism boosts local economies and create jobs, it can strain natural resources and challenge the genuine essence of communities. So again, we discussed in our previous discussion or lecture, one of the advantages of the tourism and hospitality, it creates jobs and it will also boost the local economy. But there is also a negative impact of tourism and hospitality because sometimes it can strain the natural resources and also it challenges the genuine essence of communities. So finding a balance between embracing these positive influences and safeguarding cultural integrity remains a crucial goal for sustainable development in tourism and hospitality. So that is one of the goal of tourism and hospitality industry in order to sustain the development on this sector. We need to balance the positive influences and safeguarding cultural integrity that will remains the crucial goal again of the sustainable development. So it must have this balance. Okay, we need to balance the impacts of different sectors. And one of that is the socio-cultural impact of tourism and hospitality. So later on, we will discuss about the positive and the negative impact of tourism and hospitality to the socio-cultural areas. So before we will proceed to our specific lesson or topic, I will just share to you the contents of this chapter. So the first part will be the cultural exchange and preservation. And we only have this one subtopics, positive and negative effects on local cultures. And the second one will be the social interaction and tolerance. So we have two subtopics for this lesson. First, exposure to diversity and global perspectives. And the second one is the challenges of cultural clashes. And last lesson that we were going to discuss in this chapter, we will talk about the community development and empowerment. And we will discuss two different subtopics. First is the income generation and small businesses, and the other one is the balancing economic gains and social disruption. So for this online lecture, we will focus on this first part, the cultural exchange and preservation under the positive and negative effects on cultural local cultures. So I will discuss to you later on the positive and the negative effects on local cultures. So we'll discuss about the cultural exchange and preservation. So what is cultural exchange and preservation? So the cultural exchange and preservation are the two pivotal aspects influenced by tourism and hospitality. So this is a natural phenomenon if there is a tourism and hospitality. There is always a cultural exchange because we have this interaction with different people and also the preservation. So this too is important in this industry. So tourism serves as a gateway for cultural exchange and allowing people from different backgrounds to interact, learn, and appreciate diverse traditions, not just the traditions but also the languages and the customs. Since we will have this interaction with different culture, backgrounds, nationalities, there is a big possibility and we cannot prevent that we will have this cultural exchange because we can easily observe on their lifestyle, how they dress, the food that they eat, and um, day-to-day task or activity. So that is natural if we have this interaction with different people. So there's a cultural exchange. So this exchange that it will fosters understanding and tolerance among communities and also enriching the global tapestry of the cultures. So simultaneously, tourism will plays a role in preserving cultural heritage by creating incentives to maintain historical sites, not just the historical sites, but also the traditions and the crafts. Again, that is one of the reason why the foreign tourists would like to visit particular place because of its historical sites, traditions, and crafts. For example, here in Bohol, that is one of the reason why the tourists would like to visit Bohol because they want to experience or to see the historical sites. For example, in our province in Bohol, there are many tourists like Koreans, Chinese, and other nationalities who like to visit the different churches in our province because it is considered as one of the historical sites. Not just the historical sites, but also the traditions, the way the tribes wear their daily attire, and also the different handicrafts. Okay, that is one of the reason why the tourism, um, because of tourism, it will fosters the preservation of what? The historical sites, traditions, and crafts. So the financial support will generate by tourism often aids in the conservation and restoration of this invaluable aspect of cultural identity. So the government also, and not just the national government, but also the local government, as well as the private entities, they will help to preserve these um, areas or these historical sites, traditions, and crafts. Because if they will not conserve, preserve, or restore this valuable aspect of cultural identity, there is a big possibility that the tourists will no longer visit the place. So they will have this initiative to maintain or preserve this different cultural identity. However, there's a delicate balance to strike on these things because while tourism can contribute to preserving cultures, the influx of visitors might sometimes lead to over commercialization or alterations to cater to tourist preferences, potentially diluting the authenticity of the original cultural elements. So that is also the disadvantage. The more that it will improve this different cultural identity, there will be a possible influx of visitors. What do you mean by influx of visitors? There are um, many, or there is a lot of numbers of tourists that will visit the, for example, historical sites. And one of the problem on that, it will um, potentially diluting the authenticity of the original cultural elements. So there are tendency that there are people would like to create a, um, for example, handicrafts or historical sites that is not true. So they will just create in their own to have also encourage tourists to visit on their particular place. Just like for example in the Sikatuna Blood Compact. So there is a problem on that with regards to the original location on the activity of the Blood Compact. Okay, so that is also the one of the negative impacts of this influx of visitors. So now let's proceed to the specific discussion under the cultural exchange and preservation, which is the positive and negative effects on local cultures. So I'll discuss to you, I will give the positive effects and also the negative effects of tourism and hospitality to socio-cultural areas. So the impact of tourism and hospitality on local cultures carries both positive and negative facets and influencing communities in multifaceted ways. So it is not always on the positive effects, but there is also a negative effects. On the other hand, there are also people who would like to say that any the effects of tourism and hospitality to sociocultural is only negative, but there are still we can find that there are still positive effects on this. Okay, so we have these both effects of tourism and hospitality to sociocultural. So we'll discuss first about the positive effects. We will determine what are the positive effects of tourism and hospitality to the sociocultural. First one is the cultural exchange. As you can see here in the picture, this lady is a Chinese and this lady is, I think this is American and this is Indian. So there's a cultural exchange. For example, the Indian lady will visit in America, or this um, American will visit to India or will visit to China. So there's a possibility that we will have this called cultural exchange, just like we have discussed a while ago, that there is an interaction or conversation, and we have these different languages. For example, this person can able to learn the different language. Like for example, this person that he has this conversation, there's a big possibility. For example, they will become friends, or they have this interaction because they visit this on their nation or in their place. There's a big possibility that they can also learn their dialect or language because of this activity, the tourism and hospitality. So again, the first is the cultural exchange, because tourism fosters interaction between locals and visitors. That is why foreign tourists also like to visit the Philippines, because majority of the Filipino is able to understand English language. Though we have this difficulty to speak English, but we have this almost 100% or 90% of the Filipino can able to understand English language. That is one of the advantage of Filipino. That is why there are many tourists would like to visit also the Philippines, because we can easily have this easy conversation. We can easily understand what the tourist talks about. So again, the tourism and hospitality will have or will foster interaction between the locals and the visitors, and facilitating the exchange of traditions, and not just the traditions but also the languages, as I have discussed, different languages and customs. So this exposure broadens the perspectives and encouraging mutual understanding and appreciation. And I do believe this is one of the reason of this world peace that we have, because we have this interaction with different nationality or different nation. One of the reason of the conflict is miscommunication, or we don't have an interaction with other people. Just like with our friends or classmates, the more that we have this conversation, the more we able to understand how they felt or on their situation, because we heard on their sides. And one of the reason of these conflicts is because we don't have this interaction. One of the solution to have this peace or have this strong relationship is have this conversation. And also we hear the sayings like, if we will spell love, we spell love as Time, that represent time. It means that we need to have this interaction. So the effect of tourism and hospitality, we will interact between the locals and the visitors. So that is the positive effect. It will foster cultural exchange. Next, we have number two here, preservation. Just like here in the picture, this mother asked her daughter to watch her on how to play this instrument, because this mother would like to preserve this. For example, this is a instrument that is only been seen on their place. So they asked her daughter to watch her on how to play, because she wants to preserve this instrument. At the same time, she wants to um, she wants her daughter to know how to play this instrument, because they want to preserve. Okay. So, tourism often serves as a lifeline for preserving cultural heritage sites, traditions, and the crafts as well. For example, this is a crafts. Okay, the tourism hospitality industry, it will fosters to preserve the heritage sites, traditions, and crafts. So, the revenue generated can fund conservation efforts, ensuring the survival of historical landmark and tradition. That is why, for example, in Baclayon Church, that is considered also as a historical sites. So during earthquake, there's a damage on the um, church building. So what the government and also the Catholic Church did is they restore the damaged bricks or parts of the building because they want to preserve the heritage sites or the traditions or these historical sites. Because if they will fail to restore or preserve these historical sites, there are only few tourists that will visit on their municipality, and it also affects their local economy. So that is why that is one of their strategy. They need to preserve the historical sites, traditions, and crafts. Now let's proceed to number three. We have this economic boasts. So that is also one of the positive effects of tourism and hospitality to the sociocultural. So the tourism industry will provide job opportunities as we have discussed in the previous lecture, and also injects money into local economies. So for example, there are many tourists that will visit in a particular place. It means that the tourists will spend their money on the businesses, small businesses, for example, sari-sari store. They will pay the, if for example, have a level driver or tricycle driver, and many more. So they will also helps to have this economic growth in the local areas or community or municipality. So this economic growth can improve the infrastructure, education, and healthcare, benefiting the residents. So for example, if there are many tricycles, because of the influx of tourists, it also increases the demands of transportation, for example. So the more there are tourists, the more um, tricycles. And we all know that the tricycles will apply for the registration in the local municipality. So they will give taxes or they will have this payment for the registration. So that is one also of way of helping the local community. So if there's a growth on the local economy, it will helps the improvement of infrastructure, education, and healthcare and others. Okay, so that is the one of the positive effects of tourism and hospitality so to socio-cultural. And the fourth one, which is the last one for the positive effects, is the revival of traditions. Again, revival of traditions. So in some cases, the tourism revitalizes fading traditions or crafts by creating demand for authentic local experiences. So there are many traditions, lifestyles, historical sites, handicrafts, and others who are, or not who are, that is fading away, okay, because of the time. So because of tourism and hospitality, it will helps these things to revive. So there's a revival of tradition because it also encourages tourists to visit the place. Okay, so communities may rejuvenate the cultural practices to cater to visitor interest and keeping traditions alive. So that is the advantage of tourism and hospitality. It keeps the traditions alive, though it is fading or it is dying, but because of tourism, it helps to keep these traditions alive. So that is the four positive effects of tourism and hospitality to socio-cultural. Again, cultural exchange. Next, preservation. Third one, economic boost. Fourth is revival for traditions. Now let's proceed to the negative effects. Okay, negative effects. Though there are positive effects, but there are also negative effects of tourism and hospitality to socio-cultural. The first one is the cultural erosion. That's one of the negative effects. Cultural erosion. So because of mass tourism, just for example, there are bunch or there are influx of visitors, there are mass tourism, it can lead to the erosion or commodification of traditions, and over commercialization might dilute the authenticity of cultural practices and altering them to suit tourist preferences. Okay, because if there are many tourists, there is a big possibility that the um, products or services provider, they will provide what the tourists would prefer rather than to the people in that community. So there is a possible over commercialization, and it will dilute the authenticity of cultural practices. The second one is loss of authenticity. So there is also a risk that catering the excessively to tourists, that will also may blur the authenticity of cultural elements, since they would like to provide the preference of these tourists. There's a big possibility also that it will lose the authenticity because they will modify or they will change something to provide the preference or needs of the tourists, which is no longer the original. Okay, so that is the meaning of this number two, loss of authenticity. So again, these, for example, activities or displays may become more performance oriented and straying from genuine local traditions. And also the tourists, as they watch or see, for example, the dancing, traditional dance, sometimes they also thought that that is the original or that is the genuine local traditions. But um, as the years goes by, there's a big possibility that there is a modification. There are possible um, decision that they will change something on the original or genuine local tradition. Why? Because they want to provide the preference of the tourists. So that is also the negative impacts of sociocultural tourism and hospitality to sociocultural. That is not easily be seen or observed. It will lose the authenticity of the traditions or cultures. The third one is the loss of, I forgot to edit this one. This is not loss of authenticity because this is the number two. So the number three is social impact. So this is social impact. I forget to erase social impact. So the third one is social impact. So intense tourism also can alter the social fabric of communities. So if there are many tourists that will visit the place, there is a big possibility that it will change the values, aspirations, and lifestyle that may occur as local adapt to meet tourist expectations, potentially altering their cultural identity. So, for example, there are, for example, in Panglao, okay, in Panglao, I do believe that the community in Panglao, they don't like wearing this underwear, and they walk on the highways, okay, in the roads, okay. But because there are many tourists, I think sometimes also in the highways, there are more foreign tourists than the local community in that place. So because of this power of this majority of the tourists have that kind of values and lifestyle. So there's a big possibility that the local community also, the new generation can able to adapt that culture, which is not our um, genuine traditions or values. So there's a social impacts. The negative lifestyle, the negative culture from other backgrounds, other countries or nationalities. So when they visit to that in our place, so they bring that negative values, and that is also the negative effects because the new generation can able to adapt that negative values. Okay, that is number three, social impacts. Number four, we will proceed to the environmental impacts. After social impacts, there is also environmental impacts. So the influx of tourists strains natural resources, as you can see here in the picture. So the fish here, because of this waste coming from manufacturer or any company, or for example hotels or resorts, you have this waste and they dispose it in the open sea. And we know that there are many fish and other, for example, mammals or other creatures that is living in this open sea. And for example, in this picture, the fish have this oxygen. Instead of oxygen, they have this H2O or this water and oxygen. So they have this artificial mechanism in order to live. So we can see that there is a negative impact also of the influx or the growing industry, especially in tourism and hospitality. So the influx of tourists strains natural resources and leading to environmental degradation if not managed sustainably. Just like I have give you an example in Boracay Island. Okay, because of the administration of Duterte, so they make some implementation of the rules and they make some changes. So the administration closed the establishment who did not follow the environmental regulations. Okay, and as of now, there is an improvement on the, uh, for example, water quality in Boracay. Okay, so again, that is the one of the negative impacts of tourism and hospitality to the environment, and that is also part of the socio-cultural. So again, why it also have these negative impacts, for example, to the people. So if we have damaged the quality or water quality of the sea, okay, so it also affects the fishermen because they can only get a little number of fish and it can affect their income, it can affect their livelihood, and it can affect their life as a whole. So that is also part of the sociocultural. Okay, so we are done with the negative effects. Again, for the recap, first we have this negative effects on this area of cultural erosion, loss of authenticity, social impact, and the last one is the environmental impact. So as to summary, just like I have put here an illustration, they have this balancing. It is important to balance. If you will not balance, you will be hurt, okay? Or it will lead you to die. So balancing is important in order to survive. So balancing these effects is essential for the sustainable tourism development. We cannot able to sustain the development in tourism and hospitality if we fail to balance. So the strategies that involves local community participation, responsible tourism practices, and cultural preservation initiatives can help mitigate the negative impacts while maximizing the positive contribution to the local cultures. So again, there's a positive and negative effects. So what is our goal? We need to maximize the positive contribution to the cultures and we need to mitigate the negative impacts. Okay, again, what is the strategy? What is the strategy to have this sustainable development? That is the local community participation. The local community will participate to achieve this goal. Next one is responsible tourism practices. They need to maintain the tourism practices. And the third one is the cultural preservation initiatives. They need to preserve, maintain, restore the cultural heritage or other entities. Okay, so again, this is um, the effects of tourism and hospitality to sociocultural in the area of cultural exchange and preservation. And we talk specifically about the positive and negative effects on local cultures. So it ends our discussion, and next online lecture we will discuss about the biodiversity conservation. Bye bye.